As we've already remarked, Umberto Eco's The Name of the Rose ends with a little soliloquy, if you will, by Brother William of Baskerville, where he suggests that at least two problems of philosophy that continue to this day plague his efforts to solve the crimes there at the library. One, the problem of induction. How can we justify reasoning from individual examples to a universal claim? How can we move from everyday occurrences to principles that guide the universe? Or can we? Is such thinking actually legitimate? Problem one. Problem two. The problem of universals. When we talk about qualities, when we talk about those categories into which we fit human experience, human life, are we talking about something which transcends human experience and guides it? Or are we talking about something which arises out of human experience and is used as a way of categorizing, of explaining? You see, they're very similar. Well, let's take a look at just how similar. We're talking philosophy. To set the stage, let's start with a quote from early in the book where he describes meeting with Remigio, the cellarer, and solves a little problem for the cellarer and the stable boys. One of them, seeing us, came toward us with great cordiality. "Welcome, sir," he said, "and do not be surprised if I can guess who you are, because we have been advised of your visit. I am Remigio of Vergine, the cellarer of the monastery, and if you, as I believe, are Brother William of Baskerville, the abbot must be informed. You," he commanded one of his party, "go up and tell them that our visitor is about to come inside the walls." "I thank you, Brother Cellarer," my master replied politely, "and I appreciate your courtesy all the more, since, in order to greet me, you have interrupted your search. But don't worry. The horse came this way and took the path to the right. He will not get far because he will have to stop when he reaches the dung heap. He is too intelligent to plunge down that precipitous slope." "When did you see him?" the cellarer asked. "We haven't seen him at all, have we, Adso?" William said, turning toward me with an amused look. "But if you're hunting for Brunellus, the horse can only be where I have said." The cellarer hesitated. He looked at William, then at the path, and finally asked, "Brunellus? How did you know?" Come, William said. "It's obvious you are hunting for Brunellus, the abbot's favorite horse. 15 hands, the fastest in your stable, with a dark coat, a full tail, small round hooves, but a very steady gait, small head, sharp ears, big eyes. He went to the right, as I had said, but you should hurry in any case." The explanation. At the crossroads, on the still fresh snow, a horse's hoofprints stood out very neatly, heading for the path to our left. Neatly spaced, those marks said that the hoof was small and round, and the gallop quite regular, and so I deduced the nature of the horse, and the fact that it was not running wildly like a crazed animal. At the point where the pines formed a natural roof, some of the twigs had been broken off freshly at a height of 5 feet. One of the blackberry bushes, where the animal must have turned to take the path to his right, proudly switching his handsome tail, still held some long black horsehairs in its brambles. And you will not say, finally, that you do not know that path leads to the dung heap, because as we passed the lower curve, we saw the spill of waste down the sheer cliff below to the great east tower, staining the snow, and from the situation of the crossroads, the path could only lead in that direction. "Yes," I said, "but what about the small head, the sharp ears, the big eyes?" "I'm not sure he has those features, but no doubt the monks firmly believe he does. As Isidore of Seville said, the beauty of a horse requires that the head be small, si comprope pere osibus adherente. Short and pointed ears, big eyes, flaring nostrils, erect neck, thick mane, and tall, round, and solid hooves. If the horse whose passing I inferred had not really been the finest of the stables, the stable boys would have been out chasing him, but instead the seller in person has undertaken the search. And the monk who considers a horse excellent, whatever his natural forms, can only see him as the Octroates have described him, especially if, and here he smiles slyly in my direction, the describer is a learned Benedictine. All right, I said, but why Brunellus? May the Holy Ghost sharpen your mind, son, my master exclaimed. What other name could he possibly have? Why, even the great Buridan, who's about to come rector in Paris, when he wants to use a horse in one of his logical examples, always calls it Brunellus. Okay, the first example he gives us as far as our problems go regarding induction and universals, is a problem of induction. He explains how the horse, that he knows where the horse is, where the horse went, by pointing at evidence that he's seen, reminds Adzo that they've seen it, and then he draws inferences from this evidence. Now, in this case, it turns out the evidence is right. In fact, that's part of the problem with induction. If it were just a matter of guessing, you'd throw it out and just forget the whole prospect. But it seems to work a lot of the time. It is based on what I've seen before that I project my future. The rules of motion, the rules of light, of calculations, of projectiles, all of these things derive from past experience projected into a general rule to describe all instances. Except, of course, it can't describe all instances. Well, let's not get there too fast. Let's take a look in just a moment at the evidence offered and see what I mean. Okay, when he's describing the evidence, he points out to Adzo that he'd seen horse hoof prints. All right, we're going to cut him some slack there. Horses were the only animals likely to have been shod. Possibly a mule. But we'll give him that one. He says that the hoof was small and round. Again, we'll give him that one, but if we had been there ourselves, perhaps not. It may be not that it was small and round. It may well have been larger and the snow have filled it in, or it had caved in on itself in the result of the heat of the day so that it isn't as large as it would have been. It is more round, perhaps, than it actually was when it was initially cast. These observations are being generalized as to be something we can abstract from, but are they? He points out that some twigs had freshly broken off at a height of 5 feet. Could have been a woman, could have been a child, could have been a man, all walking along going crack, crack, crack as they walk through the woods. He's right if it is for a horse, but if it's not for a horse, how does he justify thinking this way? Well, let's finish up. He points out that there are long black horsehairs in its brambles. Not human hair. How can you tell for sure? You didn't get off your horse and look at it. It just looks like horsehair to you. Or rather, you've put everything else together and then gotten to horsehair, induced horsehair from your experience there. And then he concludes that we can be sure of the last thing he talks about, where the dump is, because we've in fact seen it. Well, okay, now that's not a claim about that we need to challenge in any way, shape, or form. He has seen the dump, but it's not a claim then about anything he hasn't seen. And that's the thing about induction, is it is in general a claim about things we have not seen. We have seen a small set, we generalize about everything. We've had a few examples, and we make a rule based on that example. That's supposed to cover all cases, not just the ones that I've seen. This kind of thinking has to be justified. Where do we get off doing that? Again, turn it around. Deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning says, look, there are great universal truths, and from them I can derive certain claims about specific examples. We know all men are mortal. We know Socrates is a man. So we can conclude that Socrates is mortal without having to stick him and see if he dies. And we're confident that we're right, because if the premises are true, and they are, then the conclusion has to be true. But inductive reasoning doesn't work that way. Inductive reasoning works on probabilities. We start from our experiences that we have and go, how likely are other experiences to be like this one? Now, this is worth spending just a second on. We're not talking about, is it possible? Any number of things may be possible. We're asking what is probable. What is the most probable outcome? Well, in that regard, all that evidence taken together, I think we're safe to say that he hasn't made a mistake in his reasoning, and in fact, it turns out he hasn't made a mistake in his reasoning. All that evidence together, the most probable explanation is what he gives, that it's the horse. But the murders that he solves, he also solves following what seems to be the most probable line of action, and in every case, he's either entirely wrong or at least wrong enough that he feels like he was just lucky to have solved the case in the end. Okay, let's turn then to the second part of the example, where he talks about how he knows certain things about the horse. He says it's because the beauty of a horse has been described as, is defined as, having certain characteristics. Beautiful horse looks like this. This is a beautiful horse, therefore it must look like this. This is meant to be a deductive piece of reasoning, but it's based on a claim about the beauty of a horse, which it's not clear is transcendent. That is to say, is this the beauty of the horse because it is what makes a horse beautiful, or is it because we like these sorts of horses, we say this is a beautiful horse? Does that rule, that described rule given here by Isidore of Seville, is that something that we build from examples of horses up, or do we start with what we take the definition of a horse to be, and its beauty, therefore, and work down? This then is the problem of universals. Traditionally, there have been two answers. Answer one is it's the top down. And we saw this in Plato. If you caught the video on Plato's cave, you'll remember that for Plato, there is this great high transcendent reality, and everything else is more or less real as far as it approximates that transcendent reality, and that the truth of everything comes from this transcendent reality, and insofar, again, as our world, the world of the ideas, the world of the forms, insofar as they approximate that perfect reality, that far are they true. The other view is generally attributed to Aristotle. We can attribute to lots of thinkers along the road, but generally attributed to Aristotle. And Aristotle says, well, of course there's general principles, and there's great universal names we give things, but we give them based on our experiences of the world. We look out and we group these things together with a common name because it works for us to group them with a common name. Why is this a mountain and not a hill? It's our decision to name it this or that. That's all. There isn't any great rule handed down from on high that says, this is a mountain, this is a hill. It's just as easy as that. We make the rules up. Since we make the rules up, it isn't transcendent. It's based on our experience. It's based on our understanding of the world, based on how we want to shape things and put them together. And this is what captures our reality best. Now, the first term we call realism. It means, therefore, that universals are real. They exist on their own. In fact, they give our normal world its reality and its existence. The other school is called nominalism. No, these universals are just names that we give. They're convenient names, nominalism, that let us group things together for our comfort and our ease. There is nothing in the universe that will help us resolve that decision. I mean, there's nothing higher, no higher reality to resolve that decision. Let's take a look at a popular example that works for both of these. A black swan. Black swan goes back, the term goes at least as far back as the Romans, used to describe something that was impossible. All swans are white. This is a universal truth. What is it to be a swan? It is to be a bird of a certain shape, a certain size, that is white. So a black swan is literally impossible. And then, right at the end of the 17th century, in the southern hemisphere, we discovered black swans. Now, a black swan is impossible. How can I have discovered physically a black swan? Well, here's the challenge. And it's not always taken this way, at least in biology classes, but it's a way of taking it here as we're looking at this problem of induction and this problem of universals. We could simply say that black swans are not swans. They are given a different genus name, but as far as I can tell, that name is purely a distinction of color, that there isn't any other particular distinctive treatment. I mean, their innards all work the same, they're all grouped the same sizes, same shapes. As far as I know, they can intermix with white swans. But we elected to give it a separate species name. In doing so, we can see the problem. Is that species name a real transcendent thing, such that there has always been a form of the black swan and we just didn't know about it? Or could we simply have called it a swan, like other swans, and been just as justified, and called it a black swan out of convenience, but didn't signify anything biologically, as it doesn't seem to signify anything biologically. What's the case? Which answer is right? Just a moment. Now, induction. Why did we think all swans were white? Was it purely a matter of definition, or had that definition arisen out of the fact that every swan anybody had ever seen was white? If it's a matter of definition, then black swans aren't swans. Why call them that? If all swans by definition are white, then black swans are not swans. They're something else altogether. So if not by definition, then by induction. We generalize our way to all swans are white. We have one counterexample, and suddenly that general rule is no good. Our induction was not flawed, but inadequately evidenced. Not flawed because the induction is never certain, ever, until you have collected all the possible evidence. An induction, an examination of examples, a comparison of common items into a set, an induction is only probable. And since we can never know tomorrow for certain. We can only induce it. We can never, ever close the door down and go, this induction is 100% accurate. There'll never be a flaw to it. Because if anything was as good as that, it was surely all swans are white. Until it wasn't. Unless, of course, all swans are white, and black swans really aren't swans. How do we answer the question? Well, Echo doesn't offer us an answer. Instead, he simply acknowledges that because the problem exists, any human activity will invariably less than 100% certain. Therefore, always, somehow, dependent on elements of the universe outside of their experience, elements of the universe beyond their control. Our life is contingent, and that's perfectly okay, because we are creatures of free will. Our lives have to be contingent. Where does this contingency carry us? Well, that's next time. But for this time, let me offer you an insight of my own. I'm inclined to think that the answer to induction, how do we justify it? I think we can only justify it because it works. We are able to draw legitimate conclusions. We are able to lead meaningful lives and successful careers, and science is entirely founded in induction. Therefore, since I'm inclined to say of induction that it works, I'm inclined to say of nominalism, building your universals from the bottom up, works. It's got a simpler route to follow. It helps explain why we don't all have exactly the same ideas of universals in our heads. But that's just my take. I can defend the others if I had to, and I hope you'll learn more about it or ask more about it so I can help you understand about it. In the meantime, keep on talking philosophy.